Good day, everybody. Rob Mazak here. I am a psychic medium with a variety of different services. Some of you have heard me do some talks and some podcasts before. However, I wanted to take a few minutes and talk about my favorite modality, and that would be the quantum healing hypnosis technique that I practice. And this is a modality or process that is developed by a lady named Dolores Cannon. And she practiced this and perfected this over 40 plus years. I think it's 45, but don't quote me on that. Dolores is no longer with us, but you can find a lot of her books are out there about all the things that she learned doing this hypnosis. There's a lot of videos on YouTube. There's a lot of different ways to hear and learn what kind of information she was able to access using this technique. Now, what's interesting about it is Dolores was not intuitively gifted, I guess you'd say. She wasn't a psychic. She wasn't a channeler. She openly said that. And so basically all the stuff that she talks about in her books and on videos and podcasts and things are only things that she has kind of picked up over the years, saw patterns, and the patterns were the same across the planet or the globe or whatever it is that we live on. This place we call home. And she was able to really put some things together and learn a whole lot of things. And in the process of connecting with, as she would call it, them, she was able to establish a relationship with that higher consciousness, that higher power, and she was able to get a lot more information than the average practitioner has been able to. I don't know all of them, so I can't completely say that. But anyway, along the process of me starting this type of business, I was called to pick up this modality and start using it. And so I listened. I took the training, and the training was online. It wasn't in person, and I was wondering how effective it would be to do it that way. But what I found was that it worked the very first time I tried it. It was amazing. I'm just talking to somebody and they become hypnotized, quote unquote. And it just blew me away. And I can't say that it's happened 100% of the time for me. There's probably 4, maybe 5 people over the last 7 years that did not go where I wanted them to, even though I've got a lot of experience and tried different methods, kind of changed it around a little bit. And with the offer for them to come back, and I don't know if anybody's come back. I don't know. I have to think about that. But anyway, I wanted to talk about what this particular hypnosis modality is all about. So the premise for this particular type of hypnosis, different than like clinical or, hypnosis and things to stop smoking, to lose weight, to, those kind of things. And, there's a place for that. But, I get asked that all the time. Can you help me lose weight? Can it help me stop smoking? Well, it can. But it's not specifically designed to approach it quite that way. So what the process is it is 3 to 5 hours long for the most part. Depends on the person and how much we need to discuss before we actually go into the formal part of the session. And so it is a commitment, and it usually is more of a once in a lifetime kind of thing. I mean, you can repeat it, but if you're repeating it over and over again, then it really is not effective, or you're not listening to the things that you have received through this particular modality. And so it is a very pure connection, and I would somewhat compare it to what the great Edgar Cayce was able to do by himself, where we're trying to bring the person to that same state that he ended up in. And we're recording it and writing it down just like his wife did. So I'm not saying we're Edgar Cayce or we're that particular person or outcome, but it is very similar to me having studied Edgar Cayce. So what happens is we arrange a time and send some instructions ahead of time to, preparation to help get yourself ready for the session. At least that's what I do. And I'm sure others do very similar things. I have gotten people that just showed up and we did just fine, but it is more effective a lot of times if you do a little prep on your own before you show up. So the idea is to get clear and direct answers from the spiritual world, if you will, right? Now, we can't always completely figure out who it is we're connecting to, what entity. It's usually your higher self, your spirit guides, whomever, through your subconscious. And so basically we're reaching outside of you and me to connect to the cosmic internet, if you will, cosmos, and get pure and direct, clear answers about your life. And so you're wondering, well, what are these questions? Well, the questions are things you want to know. Things that you've always wondered, like, what's my purpose? Am I supposed to move to Dallas? Am I going to meet that special person? When might that be? What are my lives? What are the lives of my kids going to be like? I mean, there's just any and all questions you can ask. And so what I usually tell people is, let's imagine we are asking God these questions, and he would answer any question you pose. And so that's where I think the level of questions should come from and how they should be formatted. So when the client arrives at my office or wherever it is we're doing this session, we start out by having a conversation about that client, that person. And we are going to start from 0 years old all the way up through present time. The idea is to understand as much about the client, about you, that we can, so that when we are in the session and we are at the proper level and your conscious mind is out of the equation, I am your proxy. I am the one asking the questions and directing the session. So it is very helpful if I understand as much as I can about you, so that I can reformat questions or change them up or ask clarifying things. It's just very helpful when you really understand your client. And I usually stop at a maximum of 2 hours, but we usually end up going that long. And so this is a session, this 2-hour session is in depth. It is like we need the client, and me to be completely open in this session. Everything is on the table. Everything said here stays here. And so there's no worry about it being leaked out and sent to your, that your husband or your other half or your whatever is going to get hold of it. That's up to you on that, whether you're going to share that stuff. So, and part of this individual process or this initial process is also to gain familiarity, learn who I am, learn how I work, and to gain that confidence so that when we do go into the hypnosis part of the session, that you're comfortable and you have that trust built up, that camaraderie's there, and so the fear is gone. And so it really does help. And so what we do is we go over the questions as well, and most of the time we add to, take away, change questions. Usually bring some ideas forth during the conversation. You sure you don't want to ask about this? And there are some things that I ask regularly, whether the client has them on their list or not. Like, why did they choose their parents when they came back to this life? Things like that. Things that they may not think about. But I tell the client ahead of time that I'm going to add a few things just because it's very helpful I've found over the years of doing this. And so once we've done that, we're going to take the necessary break we need to. And then I use a massage table, or I'm sorry, a couch in my office. And I used to use a massage table, but not as comfortable. So I have a couch, get a blanket on, get yourself comfortable. And so then we go into the session. So the session is recorded. I record it, audio record it. I mean, there are people that video record it, and I probably should, because sometimes it's quite entertaining to watch, but definitely entertaining to hear as well. And so, plus I record it for a couple reasons. Obviously, it's better if everybody understands what was said the entire time, right? And just to make sure that people understand that, well, I think you might have said something or programming me with something. I'm like, well, no, I recorded it from the time we started talking to the time we ended. So there you go, right? So I don't want to hide anything, but at the same time, we got to protect each other. This is the world that we live in, right? And so, plus, it gives the client, you, an opportunity to actually re-listen to it and catch on to things that I may not have remembered when I back briefed you or whatever. And so I tell you, even though I'm hearing the answers, if you're under for an hour or so, I've gone an hour and a half before, I think closer to 2 hours once, but I'm not going to remember all those little minute details. I can pick up the main things. And most people want to know before they leave some of the big answers. And so I try to formulate that before you go. So anyway, the recording is something for them to listen to later, over and over. And if they choose to share it, great. I always warn them, if you want to share it, make sure that you listen to it first before you decide if you want to share it. Because there might be some things on there that your other half or people in your family might not want to hear without you first deciding if they need to hear it. Because sometimes those things come up. So I've gotten some really interesting questions, and so the answers are also just as interesting. And anyway, so what we do is we start with, I start with a short visualization exercise, just to kind of get the mind warmed up, the right part of the mind, literally the right part of the mind, the creative side, and try to get those visualization juices flowing, if you will. And then we're going to hop right into the induction. The induction for this particular modality is maybe 15 minutes. And I read it. I have the paper in my hand. I read it because if I'm going to advertise I'm doing this modality, I am going to do this modality. Now, I found that I've had difficult clients and just put the book aside before, so it's not I can't say it's 100% necessary all the time, but it's it is quite perfect in a lot of ways. So anyway, we run through the modality, and then the idea is towards the end of that modality, the reading or the induction, we're going to hop off into some past lives. And generally I can get through 2 to 3 past lives before I jump into the actually hypnotic session. And I say that because during the past life regression part, I am monitoring your movements, your breathing, your eyes, everything that would indicate when it's the proper time to ask to speak to the subconscious and jump on in to the actual hypnosis session. And so we don't cover the eyes, or I don't cover the eyes, because I want to watch your eyes. Even though your eyes are closed, I'm looking for REM, rapid eye movement. And so ideally what we're trying to do is get you to the theta level of consciousness. And it is the one right before you go to sleep. This is where all your dreams happen. This is where your subconscious is connected to source, right? Spiritual world. And so you pass through this at least twice in your night sleep, as you go to sleep and as you wake up. If you're like me, gets up several times in the night, it happens a lot more. However, and the idea is to keep you there, to hold you at that level. And so when I ask the questions and we move through it, I if I don't get an answer very quickly, I keep moving right along because I don't want you falling asleep. Which, it does happen. It has happened occasionally. And so, and the idea is to, the other indicator that I know you are at the proper level is that when I'm asking the questions, the answers come back, instead of being first person, like I and me and that kind of response, it's her, he, them, whatever your name is. They're addressing it as if somebody else is talking about you. And so it is really interesting because the individual personalities that come through are so hilarious sometimes boring too. But most of the time it's very entertaining and very enlightening. And so I ask the questions, I get the answers, and so that I ask them through you, to the source, and they answer back through you, through your mouth. And that's about the only thing that ever moves. When you're in that state, nothing on your body moves except your mouth. I mean, there are some people that do move a little bit more, but by and large, most people never move. And so there's a lot of indicators there that will demonstrate to me that we are at the right place. And so just about every question that I ask, I will get an answer for. I mean, there are times when I need to prompt them because sometimes they'll go, well, she knows, or he knows. She knows exactly what she's supposed to do. And so I'll have to go a little further and go, well, that I appreciate that, but, she really needs to hear it verbally and on the recording so that she can understand it clearly. And so I have to kind of smooth that sometimes and work a little bit more. And so there are times when they've told me, no, we're not answering that question. She doesn't need to know that. And so it does happen sometimes. But the answers that come through are quite amazing. And sometimes the source that we're talking to, bring up things that we didn't even talk about, right? And things that they left out, the client left out, or maybe on purpose, or just forgot to talk about. And it's interesting to see the client's reaction afterwards. I'm like, you didn't tell me about that. Oh, forgot about that. But maybe they were hoping that the answer wouldn't come through. And so it's interesting because I get a lot of interesting answers. And sometimes the answers come fast. Sometimes I have to wait. There's a little lag. Other times I open up the session and they just start talking. And I'm just checking through my questions to see if we've asked them all. And other times it's just the source, they wait on the question and so it is a really, really informative and really deep connection to source, and you get really cool, sorry, that's my 70s in me, really cool information and very solid answers. And so and sometimes the questions on the client's list want to know who their spirit guides are and or whom we are connecting with in the session. And I usually ask that regardless of whether the client has it on there. It's like, whom are we talking to? And it's usually they. It's usually more than one, if you will, a group of entities or spirits or whatever you would like to call that. And before you say it, before you think it, I have never run across anything evil. I've never run across anything bad, nor has Dolores Cannon in 45 years. So don't worry about, strange dark things wanting to come in. That doesn't happen. So we are connecting to the highest and best for you. And so where was my thought? And so, oh yeah, they don't like to give names. They don't necessarily, I'll ask, is this your spirit guide? And they might say yes, or we're one of them. And I'll usually ask if they're primary. If not, if they're part of a group, and if they have a name. And they don't normally give names. But I had a couple. I had one. I asked for this gal, and she, and the source end of it's like, you want a name, huh? Well, Lucy. Lucy's a good name. Let's go with Lucy. And so they can be pretty entertaining. Anyway, so once we're done with all the question and answers, then we will move on to the final part of the hypnosis session, and that is the healing part. And I say the healing part because there's a list of general questions or very specific questions we talked about, but we also break it out into things that physical, mental, emotional, spiritual healing, that issues that they have, the client has, and that they want addressed, and or to know why they have those things. And so in this section, we'll ask the specific questions of the issues the client knows they have. And so sometimes we'll find out that they need to go through it, that it's karma. Other times they will heal it right there on the table. I'm not kidding. I've seen it happen, and they'll talk me through it. And if they don't talk me through it, I will ask them, because I don't like any silence like we talked about. So I'll say, can you please talk to me about what you're doing? Well, we're rewiring the brain, and we're doing this, and we're doing that, and we're adding this. And it's really interesting to listen to. And so, like I said, sometimes they won't heal things. Like I had one gal that they said, well, she has tremors in her hands, and we're not going to heal that, because if we do, she's going to go back to the medical field, and she does not belong in the medical field. So we don't want her there. And that was one of those questions that I spoke of earlier that they didn't ask or they didn't talk about. So there's no hiding in this session at all. And so, it is really, really nice. And at the end of the actual questions, I will ask they to do a scan, because sometimes the client may have issues going on that they're not even aware of. And so they will sometimes identify different things that the client is affected with, or is going in the process of being affected with, that they need to pay attention to. And so I'll ask if those can be healed as well and all that. But and I will always close the session before I move on to counting them out. I mean, count to 10 kind of thing. You get my point. I will always ask if there's something, that special message that needs to be spoken of or from the source, and or is there anything we did not talk about that needs to be discussed, or is there anything else that needs to be brought up. And so sometimes there are some things that were missed, and sometimes I almost always get a special message for them. And every now and then they will speak about me and my path and what needs to happen. And so I don't normally ask about myself, but if I feel like there's a question I need to ask, I'll make sure the client is okay with it before we start. And so at the end, I might kind of toss that in, and I've gotten some interesting things that way as well. And so anyway, that's kind of the session. I count them out and have them sit up and debrief them and send them on their way with their recording. And it is a lot of fun. I think everybody should do this. And there's a variety of experiences, though. So I've had people that will, as soon as I start talking, literally, as soon as I start talking, they are all the way to the theta state. They don't remember anything. Other people will actually go all the way under when we get to the point of connecting with the subconscious. Some people feel like they are aware the whole time, but not awake, which is interesting. That's the way my sessions go when I've had them done for me. I can hear myself answer the questions, but I don't feel like the answers are coming from my consciousness. It's really odd. But what I find is I don't move. My entire body is frozen, if you will. And so I know in time, and the amount of time I think I'm under versus the time that I am actually under there's a big disparity there. So last time I did it, I thought it was only in the hypnotic portion of that session, maybe 30 minutes, more like 2 hours. It was long. And so, anyway, there you go. So I think everybody should try this. It is a really amazing tool, and it really brings great clarity to your life, gives you ideas of where you need to go, what you need to do, why things are happening the way they are, what you can do about them, and it helps you to become healthy on all levels of your existence. So I challenge you to give it a try. It could be with me or anybody else. We're all trained the same. And so, I mean, obviously some of us have a lot more years of experience. I've got about 7 now, I think, 6 or 7, long time. And so a lot of tricks up my sleeve. So anyway, look forward to working with you all. You can always reach me off of my website, www.lifebymazak.com, lifebymazak.com. Everything you need to know about me, contact information, services, all that's on there. So anyway, look forward to seeing you. It's almost the beginning of a new year. Let's get it started right. Namaste. Stay strong and live your life.